Start recording, audio is running. I think we're good.
Okay, let us begin then. Thank you very much for joining me for this session. My name is Juliana Hendel, but please don't let my name deceive you, I don't speak German. No, I'm located in Denmark and I'm an SAP project manager at KMD, a partner organization to SAP. So today I would like to talk to you about SAP Activate because this is where my main interest lies. I'm interested with everything that has to do with the process and how we implement our solutions. So this is not in any way a technical talk, I can't do that. I'm just gonna give you my project manager's perspective on what we can do better to implement our project using agile framework that SAP Activate is. So I will walk you through the components of SAP Activate. I will briefly talk about what it is. I will also talk about why we have this kind of projects now, because it's a completely new way of the way we think about our projects and also a completely different way of running them. I will then talk about waterfall and agile methodologies, because we often hear that Activate is agile, but some people, when they look at the stages of the methodology, they say, oh, but it has some waterfall features as well. So I want to walk you through waterfall and agile to show you that Activate actually takes the best of both worlds. And as a takeaway, I want to give you some insight or maybe a recommendation as to what you can do better in order to succeed with your Activate projects. So SAP Activate was introduced some years ago as an implementation adoption framework that helps you expedite S/4HANA. So basically it is a recommendation that comes from SAP as to how you can go from working software to a complete solution, business solution. We often hear that Activate is just a methodology, but we always need to remember that it's actually just a third of what it is, because we also have SAP best practices ready to run business processes that help us jumpstart our projects. That's the basis of our project. And we have guided configuration tools for assisted implementations. They are agile tools. And if you have been here to Achim's earlier session about agile tools, these are the tools I'll be talking about, touching briefly upon them. So that's what Activate brings to us in terms of the framework. Why do we have that kind of project style? We used to have a very different delivery approach. Before, we had a build-to-order approach, and we are now moving to assemble-to-order approach. What does it mean? It's a whole paradigm shift in the way we run our projects. We used to have our consultant as the mastermind of how we deliver. So each consultant will have very different ways of thinking about the project and delivering. And this is why, in a sense, very many projects failed in the past, because those ways may have not really suited the business needs. With Activate, we get one consolidated approach that gives you predictable results every time. Yeah, so there are some differences, crucial differences between the two delivery approaches. With build to order, we have a very simple project preparation. We will have local teams working on site, and we will be creating our deliverables from scratch. So when we start our project, we don't even know what our deliverables will be. We will be designing them or creating them every time, new ones. We will also have our blueprint phase, and we will create our development system after the blueprint phase. The solution will be accepted during the acceptance test. So that's the essence of build to order approach. With assemble to order, what we have is a very complex project preparation, because it is crucial for success. And we have more and more teams working off-site. A very important difference is a crucial difference, that we don't have the blueprint phase anymore. We just don't look at requirements the same way we used to. Instead of that, we have a solution validation phase, where we validate our solution and look for gaps and document our gaps. So, and we accept our solution earlier. We accept it during integration test. So that's, in a sense, what we have in terms of paradigm shift. Yeah. So this kind of projects, they need a new framework, which is what Activate is. Let me just take you a bit deeper into each component of the framework. We have best practices. Best practices are pre-configured packages, business scenarios that we use to jumpstart our projects. What does it mean? It means that we choose an appropriate package, appropriate best practices. We download them into our baseline sandbox environment, and this serves as a reference solution. So this is our functionality. It's a working functionality that we can showcase to our customer very, very early in the project, which creates a lot of business value, right? We have best practices for migration and integration to S/4HANA. We have best practices for extensibility, so we can create new processes or we can enhance our own processes. And we also have best practices integrated with some cloud solutions, for example, SuccessFactors or Ariba. Then we have guided configuration tools. That's the second component of the framework. Guided configuration is just basically tools for assisted implementation. And guided configuration system is now available in the cloud for customers or expert users that can command self-configuration user experience. That basically means that now we can configure our environment, and it also makes it much easier to configure. With guided configuration, we also have something that is called content lifecycle management. That basically means that we will be looking into our configuration settings, and we will be checking if those configuration settings are impacted by the new release of best practices. And in the cloud, it is very important because the pace of the change and innovation is much faster than what we have on premise. So with cloud, it is extremely important to use guided configuration. And we have agile methodology, which uses agile techniques to help us expedite S/4HANA. It is a successor to previous methodologies, to ASAP and SAP launch from on-premise and cloud, respectively. So I would like to walk you through the stages of Activate. And I would like to maybe, as I do it, to think about agile features that you may spot, but also try and think if you can recognize something that comes from maybe waterfall or what you know. Okay? Just have a sip. So you have 4 phases. Sometimes you will see a similar picture that shows you 6 phases. So there would be a phase prior to prepare and pass, deploy, run phase. But the reason why I didn't include them here is because SAP doesn't have really strict rules for how you're supposed to run those 2 phases. It's up to you. There are some recommendations, but there's nothing critical that happens within them. That's why I dropped them here. But we start we start with prepare phase. And prepare phase is where you create your project. The project manager will make a project management plan. Project governance will be established, policies, practices, all that will be in place, and you will have your sandbox environment delivered and best practices downloaded into sandbox environment. And that baseline, this baseline build will be your what you will be showcasing to your customer in the next phase, in explore phase. Explore phase is all about two different kinds of workshops. First workshop is solution validation fit gap workshop. So what we do there is we showcase our solution, what we already have with best practices, and we go through each scope item there, and we also look at our requirements, and we document every gap that we have in the solution. Now, it is important that we constantly try and drive the business to adopt our processes. So if we have a best practice that maybe doesn't quite cover the requirement, we will always try to drive the business to adopt this process, our process, because it's simply cheaper. Now we document those gaps that we found in our backlog, and with that backlog we enter the next types of workshops, Delta design workshops. Now, what is Delta design? What's Delta? Deltas is actually a very confusing term as such, and even if you just read Activate books, SAP uses it interchangeably, gaps and deltas. Sometimes they say gaps and sometimes they say deltas. So just to make it clear, gaps are those missing functionalities in our solution. Whereas delta is what it is, it's the difference between where you are and where you want to be. So it'll be the difference between delta design means you will be designing for those gaps. Yeah? So that's what it is. You will create designs for those gaps, and you will document that again in the backlog document. And this backlog document will be the main document that your Scrum teams will be working with in the next realize phase, where they build the final solution. So we have this backlog that is signed by the representative from the customer, so it's accepted formally. And we move to realize phase, where this document is our main document. We will be working in iteration circles called sprints. We use mostly Scrum in realize phase as our method of developing our functionality. We will conduct multiple walkthroughs, testing, conduct end-to-end testing, and we will start preparing for those activities. We move to deploy phase, which is where we will have our organizational readiness check, and we will conduct multiple simulations at the end. How many of those we will have will depend on the scope of the project. So we will be preparing for go live activities, and once the solution is live, the project is officially closed. So that's, in a sense, what we get in terms of the methodology. So you can see those gray circles over there. That's how we define iterative approach. These are the agile principles, the agile techniques that we use. Some in explore, but mainly in realize phase. Okay. And with that, we have a very different approach to what we had before. Because before we had ASAP for on-premise implementations and SAP Launch for cloud implementations. And there are some differences, some big differences between those approaches and Activate that we should be aware of. Well, with Activate, we have one consolidated approach for both on-premise and cloud implementations, as opposed to before. We also only have 4 phases, and Activate is supposed to 5. We had 2 different phases, separate phases for final preparation and go live with ASAP, but now we only have deploy for Activate. So we have a reduced life cycle. We have our blueprint activities replaced completely. So we had blueprint activities with ASAP, but solution validation and delta design analysis in Activate. We also have at most 10 key deliverables per phase, which makes it really easy for a project manager and for the team to work with, because you don't create deliverables from scratch anymore. You can go on SAP website and you can get a very easy educational overview of each deliverable, and each deliverable will have a task, and each task will have an accelerator, any helpful material, PowerPoint, template, whatever that you can use. So that's what we have, and we also we also have this methodology not only for S/4HANA implementations, but it also works with Ariba and SuccessFactors and other solutions as well. So you may have by now noticed that it has both features of both waterfall and agile methodologies. So with waterfall methodologies, just general waterfall methodologies, what we used to have is a sequential progressing of these boxed phases. So we had our requirements, and then we had design and development and testing and deployment at the end. And at the end you have a big outcome. So this is a very sequential planning where you have very complex project preparation, and where change is very, very hard to implement, because well, success or failure is realized largely at the end. With waterfall approach, you would have not so much end user involvement, and you will have quality control and testing executed largely at the end of the project, which makes it very hard to track project success or measure project success. But with agile methodologies, just general agile methodologies, you will have an alternative approach to waterfall, where you build your solution in small increments, in these small cycles, where at the end of each cycle you deliver a working functionality. Now with this also comes much faster product verification, obviously, and we will have user involvement throughout the project. We will also have our testing and quality control throughout the project, which makes it very easy to measure project success, and it is very adaptive, so we can make changes anytime. So that's what we have in terms of waterfall. Now, with Activate, Agile Activate, we have the best of both worlds. So we have a very flexible approach to make configuration changes. We have involvement of business and IT stakeholders from the very beginning of the project to the very end of the project, which provides a constant feedback to your teams that develop your solution, and they can adjust expectations if they don't meet the needs of the customer. We have boxed approach to confine the activities within the boundary. It also helps define milestones, and that is a feature that we have seen in waterfall. And finally, it takes much less time to implement, so it saves us a lot of cost, right? The cons of it is that it requires highly skilled resources. It's simple. Why? Because these kind of projects are new. None of us have really an extensive experience, so that's the tricky part. And it's not suitable for a project that requires a continuous change in requirements, which is also actually a waterfall feature, right? But, and I'm sorry about it, I forgot to put it on the slide, with Activate you get a complete framework for risk management. This is something you don't get with other agile methodologies. You get it normally with waterfall. So Activate considers risk management greatly and enough documentation to provide a complete overview of what you're doing of your project. So that, in a sense, is what you get from the best of both worlds. Now comes the tricky bit, right? What does it take to go agile? Well, in the past, when consultants used to work with SAP projects, and if they wanted to implement it in an agile way, if they wanted to use agile, they ran into two problems, two obstacles. And the first obstacle was ASAP framework. An ASAP framework was the same waterfall approach that whatever came before, but it just took you faster through the same stages that you are familiar with in the waterfall. It was just a way to get through the project fast. Now the second obstacle was cultural. In order to become successful in what you do, you need to practice a lot, you need to learn a lot, you need to work hard, and you all have done that, and that's what took you to the place where you're now, because you used to work in a certain way. That's your culture. You wouldn't want to change it because it worked for you. Okay, so it's a very, very difficult situation, because why would you change your old ways and why would you use new tools if you are successful already? But now we have, with introduction of S4HANA, we have a whole new set of agile tools that require agile mindset. How do you create this agile mindset and agile culture within your organization? This picture, in no particular order, demonstrates the components of what it takes. So we have the tools, practices, principles, values, and mindset. And mindset is something that is the most important part. And we would recommend to start from change your mindset, create an agile mindset. But it doesn't work like this. And normally, we first see agile tools. We first see new tools when we start working with something. And why is it so? I think that it is so because it's easy to adopt, because it can be adopted by control and command. It can, for example, become a requirement from your client or within your organization that you use these tools and only those tools and nothing else. But using agile tools doesn't make you an agile consultant. It will not make your project agile project and your team agile. So you will need to look into agile principles and agile practices in order to succeed here. So considerable effort in terms of project organizational change management is needed. So my advice is, when you have adopted your new tools, because it will most likely happen the first thing, you need to educate your teams in Activate, and Agile Activate, and you need to get your project managers certified. That is because your project managers will be the ambassadors for this kind of way of working. If your project manager doesn't like Agile, your team will not be working in Agile ways. So that is extremely important. Now, there where I work, the way we dealt with it, how can you help your employees better adopt Agile mindset and adopt Activate as our way of implementing projects, we created a handbook. Activate, KMD Activate Handbook, which looks like this. There are many chapters to it. This is just an example. What it is a set of educational materials that can help you get educated and can help you familiarize yourself with Activate stages, tasks, deliverables, and make it also very easy for you, because this handbook looks like any other handbook we have in our organization. Now, it doesn't interfere with any substandard processes or recommendations, but it does something that is quite unique, because in addition to all the materials we have that we can draw from SAP Jam or Roadmap Viewer, we also have our own accelerators, be it various templates or PowerPoints that our own. And that means that maybe we have some requirements from our client that this has to be in Danish, so we created this template in Danish. Or we want to document our change requests this way. So we also have a set of our own documents or accelerators that will, if you go to this handbook, you can find them there. So in a way, we made a big kind of a supplement to Activate. And also, each organization will have their own ways of working, and it is very important to consider the overall governance model that you have in your organization. So there where I work, we are a big organization, and we don't only work with SAP, we also work with other technologies. And but for the entire company, we have one governance model. So we have maybe the same documentation we have to deliver regardless of what kind of project it is, or same gates or something like this. So we looked into how Activate works with that governance model, and we matched that. So this way, it makes it very easy for people who've been working for decades on those projects to adopt new ways easier and faster. So the reasons to embrace Activate Agile is the fact that agile tools that come with them do need agile framework, agile mindset. And just think about it this way: if you've been playing the guitar your whole life and you know how to play the guitar, and I suddenly give you a violin and I'm asking you to play this violin using the same technique you used to play the guitar. So I'd ask you to strum the violin, and you'll try to strum the violin, but the sound will be wrong. It'll be all wrong because you are using the wrong technique, you're using the wrong method. If you work with agile tools, old waterfall ways, you will get the results that are not desired. You will end up disliking those tools. You will confirm. You will have this confirmation bias where you will be like, okay, so I knew those tools were no good, and now I tested them, they're no good, right? So that's in a sense what you get when you apply old ways to the new tools that we have. So the lesson maybe from all of this is that it takes really hard work to replace old ways, waterfall ways, with new agile ways, and we should work as hard on replacing that as we have worked with replacing old waterfall tools as well. So this is where I finish. Thank you very much, and let's take some questions. If there are no questions, I would like to say that the next session, NS session, is well worth listening to if you liked mine or if you thought that was an interest, because Anna is going to talk about design thinking, and design thinking is an additional tool, agile tool, that we use within Activate to help find out our requirements, our gaps, but also design the solution. So it's a very interesting session, and I encourage you to stay.
And Juliana, if you could go back to the slide with the mindset and the principles and the tools there, I'm also going to be talking a bit about these different elements and areas, which is super awesome that you have this in, because Activate is born to be done together with design thinking.
Anne is my colleague, KMD, so we always try to find a new, better way to help our clients work through those workshops. Yeah?
I believe this agile way is very, very efficient for internal development. For example, for consulting company, usually they do it mostly in the waterfall way. In the
waterfall.
Yeah. For example, I just talked my experience. Previously, I worked for a big consulting company. I don't want to mention the name because everyone is doing it this way. If we do develop a software for a customer, and the client come to me as a developer, he said, "Can you change the color of this button?" Mostly, I cannot say yes, because my boss told me we already spend months to finalize all the requirements and document it. And if the client wants something new, we need to calculate change request, and something like I just need to spend 1 minute, but in the end, it's 5 or 6 people involved and spend days.
It is possible to create change requests also within this framework. Of course, it is possible, but as I said, it is indeed not suitable for the projects that require a lot of changes. So, if you require a lot of change in requirement, that's where Activate is not suitable. But actually, an interesting thing is often when we write a tender bid, for example, we answer to the requirements, we can see that the client is asking for agile. They want agile. So we will be describing our process as agile, but when you actually really understand what it is that they want, you're like, they're asking for waterfall actually, because they don't really know what agile is. It's just a nice, cool word. But if you look specifically at those requirements, what it is they actually want, Activate does deliver that. So they usually would want this boxed approach with quality gates, and risk management is very, very important. And all those things you shouldn't be afraid of, because Activate takes that from waterfall and integrates into its framework. So in that way, even if they ask for agile that is waterfall, you can say, yes, that's what we deliver, and this is Activate. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, one question.
Yeah.
Did you have a look to the sub-products nowadays? We have 2 main clusters. The first one is the old technology net reservations with Hendel and Java stack. Then we have the new ones, not just in the cloud but also on-premise, which are not net reservations, like Asset Intelligence Network or Asset Central or PDMS or Data Hub. And as a third cluster, we have non-SAP projects. So most companies not just running SAP on its own, but in conjunction with other technologies and other systems. Do you have some experience using this methodology also in such splitted environments?
That's a great question.
To be in Zoom?
That's a great question. When I started working with Activate, I asked that question at Managing Your Sub-Projects conference. There were some people there that maintained the methodology. And their answer was, and this is also something that I found out, that of course you can use the methodology only without those other 2 components, because it gives you a massive amount of helpful materials. It gives you everything from project plan to all the documentation as to how to test and everything. So if it makes sense for you, you of course can use this methodology. Yes. You will just not be using the other 2 components. thank you very much.